Hi guys, Dave here, back in the shed. Today I'm going to be tackling part 3 of the air rifle rebuild. I've done this once already, but unfortunately part way through recording it, unbeknown to me, the microphone receiver powered down, so I got no audio for over half of the video. I only discovered that this morning when I uploaded the video onto the PC for editing. So consequently it's a bit late in coming on, but we're here now and hopefully I won't encounter that problem again and we can get started with it. So today's objectives are to fit the scope rail, insert the piston and springs and assemble all of that, and the cocking lever and its relative mechanism. So I'll just move the camera and then I'll show you where we're at. Okay, so the first step was to mount the scope rail. If you remember, this was just a cheap alloy scope rail I'd bought off eBay. There's already 3 tapped holes in the rifle body, in the cylinder, to take a scope rail, but the scope rail was missing in this case. Now unfortunately, no pair of those holes lined up with any pair of the holes in the rail, so I've had to drill and counter bore a new hole there to allow for it. So that sits on there, and I managed to find some brass screws of the right thread that I can use to fit it. I'm not actually going to fit it just now because it gets in the way of the special tool I made for compressing the spring. So what I'm going to do is insert the piston and springs and assemble all of that. First of all, I had a question. Somebody asked, how did I go about changing the piston seal? Well, the first thing, I tried to drill the rivet out, but the rivet just spun, so I couldn't drill it out. So what I did was just put a junior hacksaw blade down the back of the seal and cut through the rivet. The rivet's only made of aluminium, so it's very easy to cut through. So I've cut that off, fitted the new seal onto its base plate with the new rivet through the centre, and then I used a long punch with the end rounded into a dome down the centre to just dome the end of the rivet out so that it grips. So it's as simple as that, nothing very complicated. So we're about ready to put that in. I'm going to turn the rifle body over, and the new piston seal kit comes with a little package of red lithium grease. So I'll open that up. This, by the way, is why I'm wearing rubber gloves. It's not particularly harmful to you, but why get all gunged up if you don't need to? So just lightly smear a bit of that inside the seal and around the outside edge of the seal, and I'll wipe a bit on the outside of the piston just to enable free movement. You'll notice the piston is a darker colour. As I said in the earlier video, I've given it some of the blue treatment, not for any practical reason, just because it makes it look a bit nicer when you come to take it out. So that then just goes in there. Just as you're putting it in, make sure that the lip of the seal goes in smoothly and doesn't fold back on itself. And then just gently slide that in. Locate this tag in the slot, and when you get to there, you can see the seal is now at the front end of the slot. Just need to make sure that the seal stays down and doesn't fold out and fold back on itself. And then here's the springs. You'll remember from earlier videos that I got new springs. So we'll just give those a light smear of the grease. I've already done the inner one so that they will rub easily against each other. Slide that inside the piston, push the piston all the way in. We're about done with that grease. There's a couple of variations available for the seal. You can get the leather one, which I've fitted, which is the same as the original standard seal. I believe from Germany there is a modified seal available that gives a better performance, so I'm told from reading on the internet. How true that is, how much more performance it will give, I don't know. I don't even know how this gun compares performance wise, power production wise, against the legal standards of the UK, which is 12 foot-pounds for a rifle, 6 foot-pounds for a pistol. So I'm going to slot that back end in there. You'll remember there's a cross hole through there which the locating pin goes through, so I want to get that horizontal when it's in place. I'm just going to drop that into there, slide that on, line that up on the inner spring, push that in because there's still a bit of compression to deal with, and just turn that to lock on. And now I can wind the bolt up in the centre, and I can see there, don't suppose you can see it, but just there I can see the hole, so it's not in the right position for me. So before I get too much tension on it, I'm just going to push it round with a screwdriver so that it's getting close to in line, because when it comes to here, if it's not in line with that hole, I won't be able to get the pin through. That's up to position. The hole is just about in line. So now the retaining pin can go in. This may need a little bit of a jiggle to get the hole to line up properly. There we go. Just a gentle tap with a hammer. Unfortunately I haven't got a small hammer here, so just gently tap that in. That's fine, and now I should be able to push that in all the way, and that's that locked in place. So now I can take the pressure off the tool, turn it and unlock it, and that's that. So that's the piston and its seal and its springs are all now assembled in there. So the cocking lever is the next part. So this is the cocking rod. In that little indent, cut out groove, was this little, I think it's leather originally, pad that runs on the underside of the body, because as you pull the cocking lever back, that tilts up and pushes the cocking lever into the body of the gun. So it's got a rubbing pad there. This original was, I think it's leather, it's very hardened and very worn. So I've made a replacement for that out of nylon, and I can pop that in. It's a little bit of a fiddle, but get that in. That's it. So there you can see how that sits. I made it a little bit bigger than the other one to account for the wear on it, and hopefully that will fit in. You can see there I've dressed the end of that lever a bit because it was digging in, and it's put quite a score line into the underside of the cylinder body, which is obviously not good. So then that will go in like so. That clicks into place. That goes to there. The cocking lever get the right screwdriver. That's better. Just pull that screw in. Just nip it for now. And then this parallel edged screw is the one that connects the cocking lever to the push link, I think I would call it. That's it, just a little bit of a jiggle to get the holes to line up. And that will screw in there. And then now we can see how that looks for cocking. Yeah, if I just bring that a bit closer, you might be able to see that as I bring that back, that front end of the push link is being pressed into the underside of the cylinder body again, and it's rubbing there. So I'm not going to force it and do any more damage. I want to try and resolve that because I'm not overly happy with the way that works. It's not the greatest gun in the world, but if I'm doing this job I might as well do it as properly as I can. So I'll take that out. So there's two choices really. I think choice one would be to put another rubbing pad there. Choice two would be to make that rubbing pad longer so that it reaches up to there. That still locates in that slot, but it would be longer and therefore hold that off. Choice three would be something I've already started in actual fact. This is a block of nylon. I've cut a slot in it with a hacksaw. And what I was thinking was, if I was to cut a squared U channel, if you like so, that could sit over there, and it needs attaching to that by some means so that it moves with it. It only needs to go as far as that hinge point just to stop that bit rubbing on the gun body. So that's where I'm at. Let's see what we can do. So I think the first thing to do now is to cut that down to the size that I require. Which is going to be more tricky than I thought, but we'll persevere. Right, now because of what I want to make here, I don't actually need to cut that all the way through. If I just move the camera along a bit. There we go, you've got a better view of what I'm doing now. So because all I want to do is make a channel of that, I don't really need to cut through the whole block, if you see what I mean. So if I put that like so, and cut like that, I can effectively just cut a slice off it. And so this is a bit of an experiment to see if we can improve that motion so that it doesn't do any more damage. We also need to bear in mind that this piece will be operating inside the front end of the stock probably. So I need to just make sure that it will fit in there. Right. Need to just tidy the bottom of that up. It's a bit rough because all I did was just a series of saw blade cuts. I can try just try just giving that a tidy up with the side edge of a file. Not doing a terribly good job, that. So I'm going to try a wood carving knife. It's the first time I've used these. This is only a cheap set of wood carving knives I bought off eBay or Amazon. I think they're about seven or eight quid. But I have to say, just on that first use, I'm quite impressed with that. That's a very good sharp little tool. Let's smooth the bottom of that a bit. That would sit nicely there. So what I need to do now is cut off these wings, if you like. So I think the easiest way is going to be to pop that in the vise. I can do so without getting my glove trapped in it. I think the junior hacksaw might be better for this. Yeah, well, it's a bit rough and ready at the moment. I can try and trim that down a bit. First things first, we need to prove that it's going to work and solve the problem. Right, so with that sat on there, now I think it's too thick. Yeah. That base portion of it is too thick, it needs to be really thin. I wonder, what if we take the little nylon pad out of there and have that on it instead? Pop that in there, slide that forwards to there. Well, I think the theory is okay. That certainly takes the pressure there. I think what I need to do is make a longer version of that and somehow attach it to the underside of the cylinder so that this rod slides in it. That's certainly keeping that away from rubbing on the metal. Right, well, the theory looks like it's going to work. I need to make a longer and slimmer version of that nylon slotted sleeve, for want of a better description. Will that... yeah, that's going to oh, that might work to our benefit. That nylon block is up against the stock. So if I was to just temporarily pop that screw back in, right. So now with the body of the gun screwed back into the stock, if I cock that, that is working beautifully. Blimey, it takes some pulling to pull that all the way back. The springs are very strong. Ah, there's the problem. When you get to full cock, the end of that push link goes inside the stock and the nylon block falls out. But a longer block and the front edge of the stock cut away a little bit to allow a longer block in there would do the job, and that will solve the problem. So that's what I'll do. I'm going to end the video there because it's going to be relatively boring just cutting and faffing about with a bit of nylon, trial and error to make it work. And when I do the next episode, hopefully we will be at a point where that works nicely without rubbing manically on the underside of the body, and I can assemble the rest of the gun, the trigger and its sear. When I stripped it down, you may remember, the two parts of the trigger mechanism was the trigger itself and this little beauty. It's called a sear, S-E-A-R. That's the bit that locks onto the piston to lock it back. That's the trigger. So they sit like that, or might be like that actually. When the piston comes back, that tilts and that little upstand on the back of the piston locks against that edge, and when you pull the trigger, pivots about this point, tilts that, releases the piston, and away it goes. And pop, you've got a dead rat. So, useless bit of information for you. It's called a sear. The only other thing I will do before I sign off is I will screw the scope rail into place. Now, one of the beauties of using brass screws is if they did protrude far enough to interfere with the piston, being brass, it's quite soft and it won't score the piston. It may add a bit of resistance, but it won't score it. What I did when I produced this, was screwed this on, and then inside just made sure that the inside end of the screw didn't protrude inside the cylinder. But if there was a problem, being brass, they will just act as rubbing pads and not actually cause any damage. So that's that. Now a scope can be attached on there. I'm going to put a scope on it because the rear sight was missing when I got the gun. I'm not a fan of open sights. Personally, I prefer to shoot with a scope. Just makes life a lot easier and you can be much more accurate with it. Anyway, that'll do for today. I hope you found this interesting and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Hi guys, Dave here.